All right, guys, we are going to be looking at a new build today called the Lightning Frenzy Warrior. This build is going to utilize combo, or as I like to call it, Frenzy, since it's essentially a carbon copy of the Barbarian Diablo skill. Combo is a melee skill that's going to use swords and axes and is going to build up the Frenzy buff, which will give you additional weapon range, attack speed, and life per hit. Moving on, we're going to be activating to charge release. Charge release is going to release a bunch of electrified projectiles around you and explode upon hit, creating massive amounts of damage and doing a really good job of clearing maps. I have to talk about my favorite part of this build, and that is that it can move at lightning speeds. This is due to the movement speed awakening that we're going to pick from combo. You're going to get a 15% movement speed amplification, and it's basically like having a miniature swiftness shrine the entire time you're playing. It's probably the best non-spin to win melee build for mapping, but if spin to win is more up your alley, then I've got builds for those and you can check those in the video description. Also, I have to mention, it is one of the easiest builds in the entire game to get to attack speed cap due to the frenzy effect. Now, some downsides to the build: it's not going to be the highest amount of damage in the game. However, it still gives very, very solid amounts. Also pretty hard on the mana, so it's something we will have to address in our gear and in our zodiac tree. That being said, I think this is a really, really good build to level with, since you're going to get lots of attack speed and weapon range early on from the frenzy effect. So let's go ahead and jump into the details of the build. Here, the main skill we are using is combo. If you read combo, what you will see is that combo is going to have this base speed amplification, so very good attack speed increase right out the gates. This says lightning damage here. However, that is because we're going to convert this to lightning damage since we're utilizing charge release. So if this weren't converted to lightning damage, it would be physical damage. However, lightning damage is what we're reading right now. We're going to gain the swift attack upon hits. So as we're hitting, we're going to get swift attack, and it's going to stack up to 5 times and increase our attack speed. So we're getting even more attack speed here. And then after that, after we get the max swift attacks, we're going to get a frenzy effect that starts stacking. This frenzy effect is going to give us 5% attack speed amplification per stack, and then also weapon range and HP per frenzy. As we move up to the legendary level, we are going to get this frenzy effect here, some extra damage amplification. We will awaken to source. This is my preference for combo because this is going to allow us to farm much, much quicker. The reason being is that it's going to get an increase in weapon range. It's also going to get this attack radius 30-degree increase. So 360 degrees in a circle. We're going to get basically like a 1/12 of a circle extra in our attack. So it's going to be much easier to farm for that. Then this is the one that I really like. We get this 3% movement speed amplification per frenzy stack. So we're going to get a big movement speed buff as we're using combo, which is going to make us move extremely fast. If you don't care about this and you just want to go for maximum damage, then my recommendation is to go for Origin and get the damage amplification against elites. I don't recommend quick attack. Honestly, 40% attack speed is not as good as 25% amplification against elites and bosses. This is going to be far more damage. And then on top of that, getting to cap attack speed is going to be very, very easy. Now, one other thing I want to note about combo is that when you're looking at the tooltip here in our skill and we see the attack speed, as we're building up stacks here, and you'll see I'm going to be attacking and building up the stacks of frenzy. It's not going to show on our stat sheet the increase. My recommendation on how to tell if you're hitting cap, attack speed cap, which is 5. Right now I have 3.61 on the character sheet, but 5 is the cap for attack speed. It's not showing the frenzy effect increase that we're getting. So the best way to check is to just do a 60-second dummy test. You'll see here combo attacks twice. So what you're going to do is you are going to start attacking this. You're going to let it run for 60 seconds. We'll stop it real quickly. So over the course of 2 seconds, I got 26 strike counts. Used is what you want to look at. So if we do a 60-second test, 5 is the attack speed cap. You should be getting close to 300 used. under combo to be at attack speed cap. You want to look for that number when you're trying to cap out your attack speed, and you don't want to go higher than that. That would be wasted stats. So that's how I would go about doing it to check your attack speed cap. But moving on, we are going to be looking at charge release. This is going to be the skill that we triggered to. Charge release is going to release all these projectiles, okay? So we've got all of these electrified projectiles. They're going to give us a chance to shock, so shock is good. When we apply shock, we get a 20% increase in damage to enemies that have the shock debuff. And then what we're going to see here is that we get extra projectile damage amplification per one additional projectile, maximum 20. We're going to want to max this number out here. If you bring this to level 45 at legendary, you're going to have 14 charges. We need to get 6 more. How are we going to do that? We are going to awaken here the source. You can get 4 to 8 extra projectiles from the source awakening. You're hoping to get 6 or more to get the maximum amount of damage. This is also going to open up the angle of your charge release. So instead of it being just a frontal cone, it's going to basically spread all around you. So if you look at me attacking here, you'll see the charge release is going all over the place. There's like a small area behind you that it tends to not go towards, but almost 360-degree coverage of our charge release, which makes it such a good skill for clearing maps. Moving on, I use 2 movement skills just to help clear faster, farm faster. I use penetrating slash, very quick movement skill, also looks very nice. And then roll is the other skill I'm going to use, another really fast movement skill ability. For our attack enhance, we are going to use release element to get a big element damage amplification boost that's going to buff both our combo and our charge release. It's buffing combo because, again, remember, we are going to be changing our combo from a physical ability to lightning damage by converting it to lightning. So it's going to affect that as well. Defense enhance, we're going to use tenacious regeneration, basically like an extra potion on our bar. It's going to instantly recover our max HP and then give a massive boost to our HP regen per second for the duration. Finally, the seal I'm going to recommend is that you use Seal of Critical Chance. This is the best seal, in my opinion, for damage if you're not critical chance cat. So you're going to look at your character sheet here, go under skill, and you can check your critical chance here. I'm at 80%. This is going to help bring me up higher. Moving on, we are going to be looking at our links. We are converting combo to lightning damage here so that we share the same element as charge release. That way, anytime we get increases to lightning damage, it's going to affect both of our skills, so it makes sense. We're also going to be using melee damage amplification for big melee damage amplification increase. Very straightforward there. Grand approach, this one you've got to have. You're going to need to rare synthesize this one. If you can't get it through alchemy and synthesis, use your first pity on this link rune, this grand approach here, because it's that good. It's going to give us big damage amplification when we get close to enemies, and it's also going to add a lot of HP regeneration for us. So we definitely want this. Lots of damage, lots of survivability. Savagery is what we are going to use to increase the weapon range. So this is a weapon range skill. It's got the weapon range tag, and weapon range is going to be based on your weapon's range. So right here, I'm using swords because swords have much better range than axes. So you're going to get this weapon range increase here. And then I usually like to try and have equipped weapon range rolled on my weapon. So that is going to affect how far we can attack. If you want to switch out for less weapon range and more damage, you can always put on this concentrated weapon range damage rune, which is going to give a massive damage amplification at the expense of weapon range. So if you're going to do bosses and you want the most damage possible, just take savagery off, put concentrated weapon range damage down. And then finally, we are going to have Fighting Spirit. Fighting Spirit is going to give us strike damage amplification, and it's going to give us the Fighting Spirit effect, which is going to give us massive physical damage dampening, and then at the legendary level, element damage dampening for 30 stacks. So 20 stacks here and then 10 stacks here. So much dampening and survivability that we can't ignore it. So I always use Fighting Spirit. We are going to be activating the charge release And first rune I recommend, Strike. We get a big strike damage amplification. Don't worry about this attack speed dampening. This is our trigger rune or our activated rune, so it doesn't matter. We don't attack speed does not determine anything for this. The attack speed is determined based on combo. So this right here is a very nice one to have. Mana Storm, if you are doing really good in mana, I would recommend dropping the Mana Storm in here. It honestly, charge release isn't too bad on mana, so I would definitely use Mana Storm. It just adds so much extra strike damage amplification. Moving on, we have concentrated area damage. Again, very massive damage amplification increase at the expense of the area of effect dampening. So we have those explosions from charge release. They're not going to be quite as large, but the extra damage is well worth it. Element damage amplification just adds element damage amp. Very straightforward. Then lightning penetration is the last link rune that I like to use on this. It's going to give us a decent amount of extra lightning damage, and it is going to add all of this lightning penetration. Now, why is lightning penetration good? Because enemies that we are attacking are going to have lightning resistance. This is going to essentially lower their lightning resistance and act as like a big damage amplification rune. So this one is really good. Moving on to our enhanced skills, tenacious regeneration and release element. There are other runes that you can put on these. However, the two most important are time acceleration to get our cooldown much lower, and then increase duration to obviously increase the duration of these runes. So these two are the most important. Grab a dampen resource cost rune and put it on your seals to get extra mana sustain. This is going to drop the mana cost by a good bit for this. Like if I take this off, this is 13.9% resource cost amplification. It's now at 10.2. So that's a big mana saver right there. And then the other link rune I look at is disarm. Disarm is going to get our cooldown much lower for our movement skills. And that is the link skills. Moving on to stats, you're going to need enough intelligence to run charge release. Charge release takes a good bit of intelligence. So get the minimum amount you're going to need for charge release. Then you're going to want 200 for dexterity, because we're going to be trying to get this 40% damage if strength, dex, and int is 200 or more. And then put everything else into strength. Strength is just too good to pass up on. The extra HP and armor percent, I think, is more beneficial than what you get from dexterity or intelligence. So for tree 1, we're going to take these 5 points here. Tree 2, we're going to take all these points here. If you are armor capped, you can take the dodge tree instead in tree 2. Tree 3, we are going to grab these 3 points right here, get this attack speed node. And then if you are having issues with mana, grab these 5 points here. They help so much. Tree 4, we're going into pro. We're grabbing all of these. Again, if you are armor capped, you can grab dodge right. By the way, if you want to know if you're armor capped, you just go to your character sheet here, look at your defense tab, and you can see your armor right here. So 75% would be capped. We are at 13,000 with this character, so I'm not quite capped yet, so I'm still grabbing armor. Tree 5, we are going to grab these 5 points right here. Tree 6, I'm grabbing these 9 points right here to get the attack speed and the crit damage. Big node right there. Then in tree 7, we are going to grab this 1 point here for maggot to get the 40% damage. Very nice. This is why we wanted the 200 stats and dexterity. Then in scent, I am grabbing all of these points here. Get the 2% damage decrease from elites, which is really nice. 40% damage on crit hit. We're crit build, so we're going to want this. We will always have this 40% extra damage. And then I'm coming down here to grab this extra cast speed or attack speed and damage. In tree 8, we're going to get the two-handed specialization because we are going to be using two-handed swords. Why are we using two-handed swords again? Because two-handed swords have the best weapon range, and since this is a weapon range build, we are going to want as much weapon range as possible just to help clear and even attack at distance. So these are the points I'm going with right here. Take all of these. They're all really good. I'm grabbing these 5 points here in Farmer, which gives us big boost in health. And then finally, I am grabbing these 11. Usually I don't go up this route here and get these 4, but the extra double damage is nice. And then we get this nice 2% resource cost dampening. If you don't want to put these 4 points here and you would like to put them elsewhere, go for it. They're not that important, but I'm using them for the extra mana and mana regeneration. We're also grabbing Time of the Hunt. And then I come down here, Detect Prey gives us some extra crit rate and then a nice chance of movement speed increase when hit. So that is that. For our advanced specialization, what we're going to do is we're going to grab the strike amplification, come down here, grab the uplift effect, the extra effect, and then this weapon range node. In the second tree, we're going to come up here, grab sharpness, get this much needed crit rate node here at the end, and then also this damage amplification with acceleration. Man, acceleration is such a juicy thing to have. We're going to take that, and then bonfire. Finally, we are looking at bonfire. So this is my recommendation here. Come up, grab punishment, and then come down here and get the strike damage amp with the 9% HP amplification. Moving on to our gear, what you're going to want is, again, we are looking for two-handed swords for this extra weapon range. This extra weapon range is going to help you so much with clearing and maps that I would not ignore it. For stats, you're going to want increased attack damage. Reason I like attack damage here and then down here is because it's going to affect this number up here, and all of your damage is going to scale from your attack damage on your weapon. So this is big. Weapon range is another really, really good thing to look for. And then the absolute gotta have it is gear critical rate. Gear critical rate is going to change this number up here. So if I look at this, the crit rate on our weapon is the one that I have right now is 11, but it's going to bring it up to 21.3. This essentially like almost doubles our crit rate. If you remember from earlier, our crit rate was at 80%, I think, without the seal on, the seal of critical chance. And if I didn't have this, then my crit rate would be almost like at 40%, which is so bad. When you're building for crit, you need to get as close to 100% as humanly possible. The reason you need your crit rate as high as possible is because when you go and look at your stats here, we're going to scroll down. You see this crit rate we have right here. Now, the important part is the attack critical damage. Every time we crit, we're going to get a 332% or higher or lower, depending on what your gear looks like. It's going to give far more than a double hit. It's going to give, like right now, I'd be getting like over a quadruple hit. So having really high crit rate is trumps almost everything else. And then finally, I think you might want to look for crit damage on your gear. Crit damage is really nice. If I were to choose one more prefix, I think I would choose lightning damage flat. So that's kind of what you want to look for. This re-rolled when I did high crafting to element damage amplification, but no big deal. This is also really, really good. So that's what I would look for on your weapon. Now, for the rest of the gear, I'm just going to put down in the video description the stats you need to look for each individual piece. But some things you want to keep in mind is that you will want to get your defenses up. So what do I mean by that? You want to get your armor up as close to 75% as possible. Your resistances, you're going to want to get up to cap, because having low resistances is a recipe for disaster. You're going to get like one or two shot by certain mobs if you have low resistances as you are mapping in higher tier chaos dungeons. Once you've gotten your armor up to a good spot, I think you can probably start throwing in dodge gear and trying building up your dodge rate. So right now, you're looking at my gear. I have some barrier. I'm playing Origin, so I'm taking the pieces that basically have the best stats. But if I were to craft my own gear, I would be crafting for armor first to get my armor up. And then once I've got my armor up enough, I would take the rest of my pieces and do armor dodge hybrid just to get the extra dodge. And I would completely avoid barrier. I don't think it's quite as good. I don't think it's in a good spot right now. So dodge is good, but armor I think is the best thing to shoot for. Moving on to our charms, what you are going to want on basically every single one of your charms is crit rate and crit damage first and foremost. Getting to max crit rate is of utmost importance, like we said earlier. So make sure you're looking for crit rate and crit damage. And if you were going to look for something else on your charms, you could look for HP, and damage would be like the next two things I would look for. Now, moving on to the blessing effects that we're going to want to get. If you're not familiar with blessings, each one of your charms is going to give a percentage of blessing. You can see it down here. You're going to have a higher blessing effect on your charms when you have a higher tier and higher quality. So this is rare. This one would be legendary. So you can see here that the tier 9 legendary has a 32% blessing versus a 26% of a rare tier 9. So you're going to get a higher blessing as you go higher quality and tier. So keep that in mind. And then your centerpiece or your chaos star is going to take a combination of blessings from the charms that you use to create your chaos star. So if you're not familiar with that, you can use chaos orbs to create a chaos star from a set of charms. If you want more information on charms, you can click this button here and it gives like a quick breakdown. You can look through it. For the blessings that I would go for, because you can get some big boosts here. First one you're going to want is cast orb. Ignore this activate lacrima gear. That's for something else. But as you go higher in this, you're going to get this element damage amplification and this element damage taken decrease, which is really nice. The next thing I would go for is going to be Acuben to get this lightning damage and lightning damage amplification. That's going to affect both of our skills. Third thing I'd go for is going to be Leo to get this nice dodge rate amplification and then also projectile damage amplification, which is going to affect our charge release. And finally, I would look at boosting Boreal for the armor amplification and then the melee damage amplification, which will increase our combo damage. But make sure you get Castor and Acuben first. Those are the big two. For relics, we are going to be taking Avatar of Sefdar. Our passive is going to be Enhanced Chaos Resist to increase our chaos resistance, which is very difficult to get maxed out in your gear, so we get a lot here. Then our active skill is going to be Mental Stimulation, which is going to increase our damage amplification. Our next passive that we are going to go for is going to be Leo, and we are going to be taking this attack speed. So the passive is going to give us attack speed and movement speed amplification. The last one we're going to take here for the passive is going to be the Avatar of Acuben, and we are going to be choosing this enhanced lightning penetration here to get a big boost in lightning pen and lightning damage. And that is it. That is the Lightning Frenzy Warrior build. I love this build. It's been so much fun to play. Really, really good at clearing. Really, really fast. It's quickly become one of my favorite builds for farming with, simply because you're moving like the freaking Flash. I highly recommend this build, but I want to know, what do you guys think? Do y'all like the build? Is there any questions that you have about it that I've not answered? If so, drop something in the comments. I'll get with you. Is there any other ways we can improve it though? What else do you think? Do you think there's something we could have done better here? I'd love to hear that as well. I always enjoy hearing from you guys. But thank you so much for watching. If the video has been helpful at all, please give me a like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. But I'm going to get back to the grind, so I will catch you guys later.